Our world failed us and blamed it all on the gays again. Get the Rainbow Bloopers hoodie, sweatshirt, and clothing design for the winter season, and show the world how we all make mistakes, but you aren't one. The design includes the rainbow flag, transgender, non-binary, and bisexual pride flag colors in the design of a blooper reel. It's available now at pbrmerchstore.com. Cell phones, the modern day item you are so used to having in your pocket that you spend upwards of 6 hours every day on your phone. But when COVID-19 was ravaging the planet, and they finally came up with a vaccine to stop it from killing people, many Americans literally went on their phone and tweeted about how Bill Gates hid a microchip inside of the vaccine so he could keep track of you. All the while, you were holding a phone with a microchip in it manufactured by Bill Gates. A microchip that already tracks everything you're doing. But my point is, viruses have a way of bringing out the best and the worst in people. For instance, during the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, first responders and healthcare workers made their own PPE however they could, so they could keep helping as many people as possible. By the way, they never got a penny more in payment for literally risking their lives to save us. But the pandemic also saw an American president who held massive rallies and told everyone not to wear a mask or socially distance during the same pandemic. Then when his rallies became breeding grounds for COVID, and he got COVID himself, he told people to inject bleach into their body to kill the virus. For the record, that would kill you too, but that's the kind of healthcare you'd expect from someone who looked directly at a solar eclipse. Sadly, COVID was not the last to travel around the world, and this year we saw another pandemic starting called Monkeypox. But before you saw someone affected by the virus, you likely heard it was caused by gay people. So today we thought it was worth taking a look at monkeypox, how it spreads, how we can prevent it from spreading more, and most importantly, how it compares to HIV, AIDS, and COVID. Because each time, all of these viruses were blamed on the LGBTQ community without a shred of evidence to suggest they really were caused by our community. If someone is infected with monkeypox, symptoms don't appear for 3 weeks. After that, you might develop a fever, chills, swollen lymph nodes, exhaustion, muscle aches, headache, and a sore throat. All of that doesn't sound too bad until you hear from the people who had monkeypox who said it was like sitting on glass. These symptoms normally last up to 4 weeks before you would recover. Worst of all, you can infect someone else with it at any point during this 7-week period. COVID was only contagious for 14 days, but monkeypox is contagious for 49 days, 21 days of which you don't even know you have it yet. It is transmitted through the prolonged skin-to-skin contact, touching objects used by someone with monkeypox, or contact with respiratory secretions. Many people online are calling this a sexually transmitted disease, but it clearly is not. This is just one of the many ways pseudoscientists are using to blame monkeypox on gay people. The truth is that yes, you can get monkeypox from oral, anal, or vaginal sex, but those are all forms of skin-to-skin contact too. You can also get it from hugging, kissing, touching fabrics or objects touched by someone who has monkeypox, and you can also get it by simply being physically close to someone and carrying on a conversation with someone who has monkeypox. Sure, it is something you can get from having sex, but sexually transmitted infections are things you can only get from having sex. Monkeypox can be transmitted without having sex at all. But monkeypox has a fatality ratio of up to 6%, meaning up to 6% of those who get it may die from it. If you compare this to other viruses, COVID-19 only had a fatality ratio of 0.28%, and AIDS had a fatality ratio of 47.6%. So the truth is we are now dealing with a virus in monkeypox that is 21 times as deadly as COVID, and it's just starting to spread. Monkeypox was first discovered in 1958 in captive monkeys in Denmark. but scientists believe they got it from rodents, who are said to be the main carriers of the virus. Over the last 64 years, monkeypox spread so much in Africa that the virus is now endemic and has been transmitting between people continuously in Nigeria for at least 5 years. And it's at this point where you might be trying to compare it to other viruses. We found out about COVID-19 and had a vaccine to cure people within 2 years. So surely for something that has a much higher fatality rate, and for a virus that has been going around since 1958, we must have a vaccine for monkeypox too, right? Luckily, yes we do. The same vaccine to cure smallpox can be used to cure monkeypox, because they are both in the same pox family of viruses. In 2001, the United States government got so concerned over other countries potentially using smallpox as a weapon that the CDC stockpiled enough vaccines for both smallpox and monkeypox that it could vaccinate everyone in the country at least once. This means there was over 285 million doses of the vaccine ready and available at any time after 2001. But in the previous 20 years, the US government let over 20 million of those doses expire, instead of taking those 20 million and giving them to Africa so the virus would stop spreading over there. But literally, the only reason we didn't do that was because the United States government's racism for Nigeria was so strong that they didn't care if they had a virus over in Africa. Because viruses clearly have never jumped across oceans before, he says sarcastically. Now, you might be like me and might be doing the math in your head right now. That means we still have over 265 million doses left sitting in warehouses somewhere in the United States. And when it was directly asked to them, no one from the CDC has denied this. So we pretty much know it to be true. But it's not just the vaccine. Since 1958, we've also developed a test to see if someone has monkeypox too. The only problem with the test is that you have to wait for lesions to appear on the body before you can take the test, which, keep in mind, can take up to 3 weeks to appear. So we have to come up with better testing methods as well. And here is where you likely have some faith in mankind still for some reason, and think we took all of our mistakes with COVID and we learned from them to build a better healthcare system so we never have to deal with the same problem again. But here we are. Yet again, individual hospitals testing for monkeypox are not communicating with the states or countries to tell us how many cases of monkeypox there are. Even when they do, those systems rely on fax machines to transmit the data, because sending an email or having a nationwide database is literally beyond our current capabilities. So the good news is that for monkeypox, we already have a test to see if someone has it. We already know the symptoms, and we already have the vaccine for it. The bad news is the vaccine for it is sitting in warehouses across the country, and you have to wonder why it's taking this long to open up the doors to those warehouses. Even by current CDC estimates, they claim, quote, data suggest that gay, bisexual, and other men who have sex with men make up the majority of cases. The CDC is so focused on this that they claim on their official monkeypox reports, quote, public health efforts should prioritize gay, bisexual, and other men who have sex with men who are currently disproportionately affected for prevention and testing while addressing equity, minimizing stigma, and maintaining vigilance for transmissions in other populations. And even though the CDC and World Health Organizations are telling officials to prioritize the LGBTQ community here, our community members are still finding massive hurdles to jump through and massive problems finding the vaccine in every state in the United States, because the government is keeping those vaccines locked away in warehouses waiting to expire like the other 20 million doses already did. But this discrimination is something we have sadly seen many times before. In 1981, doctors in California started discovering a virus among men. At the time, they only saw the virus in a handful of men, all of which were known to have sex with other men, and thus conservative Christians started calling this the gay cancer and the gay disease. they started spreading misinformation saying gay people deserved such cancer because they weren't following God. And like you, I will never understand someone who thinks their God would kill people on purpose, and that claim they are holier than thou, while also claiming other people deserve to die. Back then, Ronald Reagan was the President of the United States, and for his actions here and in many other cases, he would become known as the second worst president of US history, right after, you guessed it, the laughingstock of the world, the frickin' orange. But back in those days, his administration routinely laughed at and poked fun at the AIDS epidemic, and they too called it the gay cancer. In fact, for the first 4 years, much of the research done to find the cause and the cure for AIDS was funded by the LGBTQ organizations at the time. By 1985, nearly 9,000 people had AIDS, and half of them have already died, but only 70% of them were LGBTQ. It was only when Reagan found out that 30% of people who died from AIDS were straight people that he put any funding into finding a cure. As of today, over 84.2 million people worldwide have been infected with HIV, and about 40.1 million of those have died because of it. By all estimates, 38.4 million people are currently living with HIV, but luckily the scientific community is making advancements to where there are medications that can control HIV and prevent the complications that cause death. But it might surprise you to know that HIV and AIDS were not caused by gay people either. In fact, HIV infections in humans came from a type of chimpanzee in Central Africa. And studies show HIV jumped from chimpanzees to humans in the late 1800s, when humans hunted the animal for meat. It slowly spread across Africa and later jumped to the United States in the late 1970s, later being found in California in 1981. We now call this person in California Patient Zero, but truly Patient Zero was someone who lived in 1800, not 1981. So with the HIV and AIDS epidemic, it was caused by someone in Africa, innocently hunting for food. It took many years, but then jumped to the United States in 1981, and was found in a few gay people at the time. Society blamed the disease entirely on the gay community, so no one besides our community members put any funding into finding the cause or the cure for it. That was until they realized their perfect husbands were not so straight after all, and it started spreading in the straight community too. Then suddenly they tried to find a cure, but they still blamed it on gay people, despite the research proving it originated somewhere else. But in February of 2022, they started noticing that more straight people are currently infected with HIV and AIDS than LGBTQ people, which means this so-called gay cancer was never interested in your sexual orientation in the first place. But now that more straight people have this problem than gay people, suddenly we're spending more than $500 billion to find a cure. This just proves the straight politicians in power only care about themselves. Those experiences we lived through in the AIDS epidemic helped the LGBTQ community massively. In fact, when COVID-19 was spreading around the world in 2020, LGBTQ people were the first people to listen almost entirely to the recommendations made by public health officials. We learned our lessons the hard way when it comes to viruses, and we weren't going to do all of it over again, making the same mistakes. The president of the US at the time, Donald Trump, sadly, was listening to his advisors and blaming COVID on the gay population, without any shred of evidence to prove such a wild claim. He then blamed it on the Chinese, again without any evidence to back his claim there either. And coincidentally, hate crimes against LGBTQ people and Chinese Americans rose dramatically during this time. But honestly, are we surprised his audience of gun-wielding lunatics committed crimes in his honor? After all, they followed his orders, stormed the Capitol, and committed treason against their own country while murdering several police officers. But hey, back to Blue Lives Matter, right? When the vaccine for COVID came out, the LGBTQ community was the first demographic community to get vaccinated. In fact, In the first few months of the vaccine becoming available, 92% of the LGBTQ community got their vaccinations, long before any other community or demographic. But here we are with the monkeypox virus less than 2 years later. For a third time in a row, the LGBTQ community is being the hardest hit, but this proportion won't last long. Viruses don't care about your gender, sexual orientation, nation, or religion. The straight community is already under attack from monkeypox, and unlike the HIV, AIDS, and COVID pandemics, we already have a test for monkeypox and a vaccine. So the question becomes, why is that vaccine sitting in a warehouse? And while the White House has said they are keeping an eye on things and protecting the LGBTQ community, Congress certainly isn't. And that is who might be holding the key to the warehouse locks. Because Congress holds the funding which allows that vaccine to be distributed, and it can write the legislation to where it's distributed to. Sadly, right now, we have people like Marjorie Taylor Greene in our Congress. Marjorie is a United States representative who is paid over $174,000 per year, and she literally spends a majority of her time in office trying to strip Americans from every basic freedom promised in our founding documents. Marjorie Taylor Greene fully believes that Oprah Winfrey kills babies and drinks their blood to survive, believes the Democrats are running a child sex ring from a basement of a pizza restaurant that, fun fact, doesn't actually have a basement at all, and falsely told her followers that wearing a mask and socially distancing are not ways to stop the transmission from an airborne virus like COVID, even though the CDC says otherwise. Keep in mind, Marjorie is the woman pushing an anti-trans bill through Congress right now, trying to keep trans people from getting basic health care, and she routinely attacks Admiral Rachel Levine, who single-handedly saved millions of lives. All I'm saying is Marjorie knows nothing about science, and yet she and her 1 million followers online are trying to dictate how scientists and doctors provide life-saving care. But she pretty much summarizes how the Republican Party operates right now, believing in a QAnon conspiracy theory, praying to their god Donald Trump, who will leave them stranded the first chance he can, and firmly believing education is the enemy, because they know the more educated you are, the more likely you are to swing in a liberal voting pattern. So yeah, Republicans have a great spokesperson right now. Wonderful job there, by the way. But the point is, we've been here before. Every time a virus starts spreading around the world, we don't look at the evidence of where it came from. And in fact, we hide the evidence from ourselves most times. We just start blaming it on the gay community. In situations that determine whether we live or die as a species, we constantly discriminate and don't care about things until they are happening to us personally. Our society watched thousands of people die from AIDS, including my uncle, and did nothing until straight people were affected too. We watched COVID make its way through Europe and Asia, but didn't care enough to fund the research until it came to America. But while none of that is forgivable, at least with monkeypox, we seem like we should have done better. We already had a test and a vaccine sitting in a warehouse waiting to be shipped out. Our lawmakers chose to keep that vaccine to ourselves and chose to let it expire rather than saving 20 million people in another country, all because we as the United States still have racism coursing through our veins. But then that virus, like many before it, including AIDS and COVID, jumped across the ocean and came here. Suddenly, now it's our problem. But rather than learning from our mistakes in the past with COVID and testing like crazy, sharing ideas between agencies, and following the recommendations of our public health officials, who spend every day trying to save our lives, and distributing a vaccine we already have to the community most affected right now, we're letting it sit in a warehouse, waiting for it to expire, just because our country is just as much homophobic as it is racist. It's not all straight people that are the problem. In fact, over 80% of non-LGBTQ Americans believe LGBTQ people should be treated equally. It's the minority out there controlled by the conservative Christians, who can say all they want to how much they care for every human life. After all, they were the ones who spent 50 years fighting for Roe v. Wade to be overturned, so they can protect unborn babies. But it's time we realize those individuals do not care about your life after you are born. After all, they are the ones holding 165 million doses of a vaccine hostage, just because they seemingly don't want a gay, bisexual, or an African American person to be saved from it. They would literally rather see a life-saving vaccine expire than give it to us. So Marjorie, you might claim all you want to, you're a conservative Christian, but I don't know of any Christian in the world who would truly rather see people die. And President Biden, you might claim you're a friend of the LGBTQ, but we've already seen in the past how you feel about gay marriage. Even now, you're not doing anything to stop the Supreme Court from taking marriage equality away from us. And now, you're the one holding the key to 165 million doses of a vaccine that could literally save LGBTQ people's lives. It's time we stop letting these politicians get away with this, and stop calling themselves the friends of our community, or saying they protect the freedoms of citizens, while they routinely backstab us and withhold resources we need to survive. And for fuck's sake, stop blaming every problem you have on the gay community. It's like everything else in the 1980s, from the epidemics to the rock music. We've heard it far too many times already. Far too many cover bands have played it since then, and now it's just annoying every time it comes on our iPhones, which, yeah, they track us more than the vaccine. Anyway, if you want to learn more about the LGBTQ community, check out this episode right here, or subscribe for weekly episodes. And if you like what we do and want some awesome merch, go to pbrmerchstore.com. As always, I'm your host, Professor Pride. Have a gay day, everyone, and bye for now.